I kind of want you to start from the beginning of when it all happened, kind of the whole process. So
Yeah, absolutely.
let's dive in.
Okay. So I guess in order to start the timeline, I have to go back to when I was 12. I had been like a really happy, healthy child. And then when I was 12, I started having some health problems, aches and pains in my joints, stuff like that. Over the course of the time between I was 12 and when I was 16, I was in and out of doctor's offices just trying to pinpoint what was wrong with me. And ultimately, when I was 16, I ended up in a medically induced coma in the hospital.
Oh,
and that led to a lot of scarring, a lot of weight loss, hair loss. And by the time I'd been in this coma for quite a while, they were like, you know what? This girl, like, we don't know if she's going to make it. Like, we might want to pull the plug.
At 12 years old.
I was 16 at that
16,
point. So
okay.
between 12 and 16, I was battling, like, in and out of doctor's offices. Like,
Okay.
like I'd be fine for a while. I'd have energy, and then I wouldn't be able to move. Like, I'd just be in bed.
So be in
like,
and out. I gotcha.
You know, no one knew what was wrong. They all just had their theories. Like, oh, it's arthritis. It's this. It's that. But nobody knew exactly what the problem was. So at 16, I'm in the hospital. They still don't know what's wrong with me. And they're like, yeah, she's like, her heart's not pumping properly. Like, she's not going to make it. And so we, like, my parents were like, nope, she's a fighter. She's going to be fine. And they had a lot more faith in me than I did.
That's awesome. This is at 16 years old.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, 16. So it was terrifying, you know. I mean, I'd gotten used to being poked and prodded in the hospital, but at this point, you know, I woke up and I had no idea where I was and what was going on, and I was about 60 pounds and had lost my hair and lost much of my ability to move, and it was terrifying, you know.
That is terrifying. That is super terrifying, especially as a parent. Just imagining like just the whole process beginning to end would just be a nightmare. I mean, this isn't, like you said, it to happen from 12 to 16. That's 4 years of just battling this thing. That just sounds like an awful experience. But when did things? I'm assuming things got worse before it got better.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So what happened after you're 16, hair loss, 60 pounds? Like what was going on at that point?
So at that point, you know, we're battling this what is wrong with her question, you know. And my parents were just there every step of the way, trying to comfort me, trying to let me know that things were going to be okay, even though we were all not really sure what the outcome would be. And honestly, they thought that I wasn't going to make it out of this. Like,
really?
Everyone was thinking, like, she's going to end up dying. Like, this is it. But when I woke up, you know, things started to progressively get a little better for me, but the conclusion was that I was going to be either bedridden or in a wheelchair for the rest of my life.
Really? Mm-hmm. That's what at the point that they were saying what's going to happen with you.
Yeah. The doctors were like, "Yep, she's going to be basically
so,
like."
When that happened, so when they were like talking to you about that, being in a wheelchair, or what your life was going to be, how long were you in the hospital prior to that? Like, was it like a couple of weeks and you're like, okay, it's getting just so bad, or was it a month, you know?
So I was actually initially brought into the hospital December 21st, and then I was put into a medically induced coma right within that same week.
Oh, wow.
And then I woke up in late February.
Oh, my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
That's insane. That's 2 months.
Yeah.
So you literally, there's no memory. There's just... Do you recall of like what waking up like felt like? Or was it like it just like kind of waking up overnight? Like, do you?
Yeah, kind of. It was like I'd been asleep for a really long time, and I didn't remember going to the hospital, even though I was coherent for that trip. I was like, I don't know why I'm here. I had no idea where I was. You know, I'm in this strange room, and I was like, I couldn't remember like the doctors around me. I'd met them. I couldn't remember them. Like all I wanted to know was, where are my parents? I'm like, where are my parents? Okay. What's going on? Like, right. It was so scary.
Yeah, that is super scary. At least that's the first people you ask for. And at least you woke up recognizing them. That's like a decent sign, rather than waking up being like, who am I?
Yeah.
You know, so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think terrible. My parents were worried about that a little bit.
Yeah. So when they show up, though, and you're finally, did you wake up on your own? Did they bring you back, or what was happening in that? What was the point of that 2-month coma?
I woke up on my own, to answer your initial question, and then in the coma, they decided, because my heart was only pumping at 10% at the time, they determined that the easiest thing would be to put me on life support. So I had a breathing tube, a feeding tube, and they figured that would be the the most chance for me to survive this. The best chance would be to put me in this coma. But as time went on, they started to doubt I would ever wake up.
Wow,
So,
that's insanity. So it's this battle of going back and forth. Were you guys seeing multiple doctors, or was it kind of like the same doctor? Like, how are you trying to like solve this thing?
so we had been in and out of doctors' offices. We'd been to doctors in Pocatello. We'd been to doctors in Utah, and then ultimately we found this. I just ended up in the ER
Right.
because I'd been dealing with this for years, and everyone had an opinion,
Right.
But ultimately, it just reached this point where the ER was, the best solution, even though like I had been doing all right on and off. This was pretty normal after 4 years.
Wow.
And we'd been to every doctor, we'd taken any route we could think of to try to get me better.
Right.
But yeah, ultimately just ended up right in the
Right.
emergency room. So
Right in the emergency room. So you spend 2 months there in the coma. When you wake up, what was the next step? What was going on at that point?
so when I woke up, it was a really big conversation of, okay, what's the next step? Like, do we want to consider physical therapy? And if so, what are the goals? And the goal was really, let's get her into a wheelchair from this bed. And they said, if we can get her to the wheelchair, then we're happy. We're set. We've gotten her where we want her to be. And that's probably like the extent of where she'll get.
Right.
And that was the doctor's goals for me. My parents ultimately were like, she's going to be able to walk again. We're going to get her there. But it didn't look good at the time.
Right.
My muscles had atrophied from being in bed for so long. And so
That's a nightmare. So how long? So when did you get out of the bed? Because it was a struggle, but did you ever get out after some time, or?
yeah, it was like the first time they ever sat me up in bed, it felt like I was on a roller coaster. It was
Man.
just crazy. And then so I'd sit up in bed and started working my back muscles that way. And then
So they slowly built you up.
yeah, slowly got me into a wheelchair that I couldn't push myself. And then eventually from the hospital, I went to rehabilitation, and that's where they worked on my arm strength, getting me to be able to push my own wheelchair. And at first I couldn't even feed myself. It was difficult for me to even move my arms.
So were you conscious? Like, were you aware of like all this is going on? Or were you, okay, so you were conscious. It was just like mentally you were there, but physically you were not.
Yeah.
Dang.
And I even when I was in my coma, like I reacted to my parents' voices a bit and things like that. And then once I came out of it, it was like my body couldn't do much, but my mind was very aware. Like I was very aware of what was going on. I was scared. I felt the stress of my family. I felt the stress of the doctors. It was really difficult to not be able to do anything about it. You know?
So at this point, you were 16 years old. How old was Landon at this point?
Landon was 12. Yeah.
So do you remember any of this?
Oh yeah.
A lot of it. So like I was about to say, you say your family was there? Was that kind of like a? Because in the times I've witnessed loved ones being sick or unwell or passing away, to put it blankly, is a lot of the time we always did this thing where, and it's very common, is someone's always almost there. Was it similar with you, that someone was always trying to be there, especially with the amount of siblings you guys have? I think, how many siblings, by the way?
7.
They
7 kids.
7 kids in total. Yeah, 7 kids in total. This is 2 out of 7. We're gonna get all of them. But yeah, that's crazy. So I can't imagine what a nightmare it'd be having to just deal with all this and to try to get that physicality, I don't know what the correct term is, but to get that back, but mentally be aware. It must be just like frustrating in the same right as depressing and hard,
Yeah, it was really hard because as a child, I mean, Landon can attest to this, we used to run around and just do anything and everything we could think of. We were very adventurous kids, and I am definitely a free spirit. I like to do my own thing, and so it's really hard to be confined and being told what I can and can't do. Right. And the doctors are saying, you're never going to walk again. You're going to be in a wheelchair. And I'm just sitting here going, I don't want that.
Yeah,
Why?
that's
like,
awful.
I'm like, no, that's not me,
That's
and
awful.
feeling absolutely helpless in it, just trying to figure out how I can possibly overcome that, and feeling like I never could,
Right. Yeah, I don't even know why the doctors would say things like that. Obviously, they were wrong, So it's like you feel like as a doctor, you can be realistic, but it's like got to be inspired at the same time. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? Like, it's awful.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I think that they were trying to maintain that sense of realism, and trying not to get our hopes up, but at the same time, like, where it's amazing what we as human beings are capable of doing.
Yeah,
So,
big facts.
yeah.
So, when you went to this physical, what do you call it, rehab?
Mm-hmm.
How long were you there?
I was in rehab from, let's see, March to the end of April.
Wow.
End of
Okay.
April, so almost 2 months in rehabilitation, and it was kind of about just becoming self-sustaining in a wheelchair, being able to push myself, being able to reach the counter and be able to cook, and it was just kind of about like, hey, this is probably going to be your life now in this chair, so we just need to get you, like, they had a goal weight for me, and they
Right.
said once you reach this weight and once you're able to kind of take care of yourself, then we'll be able to send you home.
That's crazy. That's crazy. So, when you finished up at the rehab, you were still in the wheelchair? You haven't gotten
Mm-hmm.
out of it at this
Yeah,
point yet,
not
right?
yet. No.
So, when you leave the rehab, what was going on after that?
So that was a challenge. That was definitely a challenge because it was time to go back to real life. Within the walls of the hospital and rehabilitation, it's very much about like these doctors are there to help you. They understand what you've just been through, and your family surrounds you all the time. And then it was going back to trying to be a teenager again.
Right.
A 16-year-old who's confined to a wheelchair who has not always had that life. And like I had mentioned before, I'd lost my hair. I was at this point on steroids and medication, and it really messed with my emotions. And so at this point, I'm trying to figure out how to adjust to being in this chair, how to be a normal teenager, I'm like, am I ever going to have a normal life? Like, am I going to be in this chair forever? Is anyone ever going to want to date me? Like, there's all these questions in my head,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sitting here going, I don't know if I can do this.
Right.
And it started to create a kind of bitter streak within me. I started to resent the hospital or resent, like, whatever this illness was. I was frustrated by it. I was like, this isn't fair. And I just started to just become this bitter person.
Right.
And just feel like I was never going to overcome this.
Right.
And that was frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, you have every right to be.